Hey, everybody. Welcome to, well, this isn't quite one of our standard shows, but I kind of wanted to do a general show just running down the draft. Originally, I was going to call this a draft guide for dummies, but I almost feel like that's being mean and that's beyond the intention here. Where I was just thinking for somebody that's a more casual fan, somebody that's a Flyers fan that might not pay attention to minutia like draft picks, or just somebody who's new to the game and wants to check it out, like I wanted to put together, a simple draft guide so you can go enjoy the draft on Friday, maybe even join us at the Broad Street Hockey and PHLY draft party at Chickies and Pete's on Friday. So, the more the merrier for that party. It's going to be a great time. We love people coming out and saying hi and everything. But hockey can be a tough sport to get into sometimes, and there is so much to remember. There's so many guys to put on a roster that I think doing stuff like this, sometimes a little bit of outreach is good. And who better to do this? So, you know what? I didn't introduce myself. So if you're new, I'm Steve Chico. I host a show called Flyperbole over on Broad Street Hockey. Been doing that for a while at this point. And I also moonlight over on PHLY occasionally. And joining me is one of our best experts on draft picks, somebody who follows this much more than I do, and just a wonderful person to have a hockey conversation with at any time, Maddie Campbell. Maddie, how you doing today?
Hanging in there in this weather, but thrilled to be here.
We're recording this. The real feel is over 100 degrees right now, so we're doing great. I came home, took a rinse-off shower, and it's hockey weather, right? This is what makes you think about hockey.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's brutal out there, but, we're here making the content for everybody. I'm doing this. I'm doing a podcast after this. We're cranking it out right now, so we're having a good time.
It's a fun time.
It is a fun time. And that's where I wanted to start off on just a quick, rundown on the state of the Flyers. So it might not seem like a fun time if you're a casual and just paying attention on the periphery. They finished fourth worst in the league last year. They haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. And it might seem pretty bad, but it actually is a lot better than it might seem on the outside. Matvei Mishkov just finished fourth in Calder voting, and we would argue with that placement all day because he had a fantastic rookie season, the best rookie season since Michael Renberg in the early 90s, and that was a different era entirely. So what he did is so massively impressive, and you've got guys like Mishkov, you've got Travis Konecny, Travis Sanheim, Sean Couturier, Owen Tippett, Tyson Forrester, Noah Cates, Cam York, Bobby Brink, Jamie Drysdale, Sam Ersson, and the new addition that they just got literally yesterday, Trevor Zegras, who was with the Anaheim Ducks, and they just traded for him. So there's a lot of really interesting names, and I think this is a great time to jump on the Flyers bandwagon. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for the next few years.
Yeah, it finally feels like, for the first time in I don't know how long, that things are actually moving in the right direction.
It really does, and I try to tell people that, and people think I'm a nut, but I really feel that way. I genuinely feel great about this team, and a lot of it's just Mishkov because he's such a revelation.
Yeah.
And there are some interesting names in the pipeline right now. The two guys I have highlighted on my spreadsheet here, or my shared show sheet, are Jet Luchenko, who's a really young center. He's under 20 years old. And Oliver Bonk, who is a defenseman who's up and coming and really has made huge strides since the Flyers drafted him. And are there any other guys that you want to highlight in the system right now? Because I know you're so familiar with the Phantoms and just who is in the pipeline for the Flyers right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next biggest names would be a Denver Barkey or an Alex Bump, both of whom are going to be probably with the Phantoms next season, so graduating to the pros on a full-time basis. So that's exciting as well.
Yeah, I love those guys. Bump had a really, really fun tenure with the Phantoms in the playoffs last year. And Barkey, everything I've heard, he's got so many attitude things that the Flyers love, just this tenacity to him.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of Travis Konecny in him, and Travis Konecny is a known tenacious rat of a player, and we adore him here. Yeah. So real Flyers types. But if we're talking needs for the Flyers going into this draft, the obvious one is the center position, which used to be one of the key strengths of this franchise and has not been for a while at this point. The Athletic just had an article where they ranked the center depth on all the teams in the league, and the Flyers were ranked 31st out of 32 teams.
Yikes.
Yeah, pretty bad. Trevor Zegras could be a center. We're not sure if he's going to play center or wing right now. He likes center. I think we'd all prefer if he ends up playing center. but it's a shot at that position. But the expectation is coming into this draft, that's going to be one of the big focal points for the club.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like they're going to give Zegras a real run at the center position again. So that certainly gives them a boost. They do still sort of have to deal with that fourth line center situation because like they swapped centers for center and it's an upgrade, but still leaves a little bit of a void at the NHL level at least.
It does. And we're talking about guys like Luchenko could come in and fill that role. Rodrigo Abols could fill that role. So there are a couple names in the pipeline. They could also go to free agency and sign a guy that maybe even they sign a guy at the top of the lineup that bumps some guys down. Who knows? But it's going to be a really intriguing offseason. So again, I urge you to come on board the bandwagon, follow us over at Broad Street Hockey. We're going to be going through all that stuff, but center's what we're looking at coming into the draft. Goaltending's a big question mark for this team too, but goaltending, they have a couple guys in the pipeline that could be solutions. I'm not sure also like drafting goaltenders. That's not usually a first round thing. It might be second, third, fourth round, something like that.
Yeah. They're definitely still trying to figure out their short-term solution there, but certainly a bunch of interesting options in the longer term. That's kind of the frustrating thing is like goaltender development is just such a long track that it's going to be a little while still before we see some of these prospects, but I would still say they're in a pretty good spot in the pipeline.
And the two biggest names right now are Carson Bjarnason, who's going to be playing with the Phantoms, and Zavragin, who is over in Russia at the moment, right?
Yeah, he just finished up his first full season in the KHL, I believe.
Outstanding first season, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're really excited about both these guys. Zavragin's put up outstanding numbers overseas. So, look, the thing about goaltender is you get as many like lotto tickets as you can, pretty much, and see who works out.
Yeah.
And then I would say the defense is in pretty good shape. Sanheim's very good. York is solid. Ristolainen's made big strides, but he's aging. Drysdale's a wild card, but he's come a long way. Sealer's solid, but has a low ceiling. But I think at this point, you really need like more of a top of the lineup defensive guy for the future Flyers with they're trying to compete for a cup.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the hope is that Oliver Bonk can develop into that, or even a Spencer Gill, who's still much further away. But they're still that they are hoping are going to pan out. They're still a ways away, but again, like they've got some pieces.
They have some pieces. There's definitely, I feel like the immediate defense is probably better off than a lot of other areas on this team.
Yeah, for sure.
But they have a ton of picks in this draft to really address a lot of that stuff. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get this all together is this is a huge draft for the Flyers. They have 3 first-round picks alone. They have 10 overall. So it's 3 in the first round, 3 in the second round now. It was 4 before the Zegras trade, 1 in the third round, 2 in the fifth round, and 1 in the sixth round. So that's a ton of picks. My first question for you with this, how many of those first-round picks do you expect them to make? Do you think they're going to make all 3?
Right now, I'm expecting that they are going to make all 3. When Danny Briere spoke yesterday, he did make a point of saying, we went through a lot of pain and frustration to get all of these picks, and we want to be making them. Now, I know like GMs lie all the time. It's hard to take them at face value, but like I really do understand where he's coming from on that one. So as much as GMs lie, I am inclined to believe him on this particular one.
We're going to see. I mean, the names that are out there, the only real center in the trade market right now that you have a real shot at getting is Marco Rossi from the Minnesota Wild. And Marco Rossi, there's been a lot of debate about how much the Wild are asking for him, how much he's asking for contract-wise. So that's a guy that he's an appealing player to the club, but he's got, we don't know how much he wants in the contract. It could be quite a bit. And it sounds like he's asking for a long-term commitment. And B, on top of that, he is like, I really like him, but there is talk about him being undersized because he's under 6 foot. And I don't think he plays that kind of game. But there is, when you're thinking about the long term, and specifically Sean Couturier being their most effective center of the past, like maybe decade at this point, he's aging. He's getting up there. And Sean Couturier, when you're thinking about Matvei Mishkov going into his prime in a few years, Sean Couturier might not be on the club at this point. And you have to think, who's going to play with Mishkov? And I know size might not be the factor that it once was, but it does come up quite a bit when you talk about center.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Rossi's up there. There's also a couple wingers that are intriguing out there. J.J. Paterka from the Buffalo Sabres, Jason Robertson from the Dallas Stars. But those both feel like moves that don't really make sense to the Flyers in their current state.
Yeah, especially now that they pulled the trigger on the Zegras trade.
Yeah, exactly. The Zegras trade really it changed a lot of this landscape. And it doesn't mean they can't do something. Those 3 first-round picks in particular, like, that's a lot of ammo to deal with other teams. But I'm also interested to see if they do a move like last year, for instance. They had the Florida Panthers first-round pick, and the Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup, so it was the worst pick in the first round. So the Flyers traded a year ahead with the Edmonton Oilers, and guess what? They got the second worst pick in the first round instead.
Incredible work, truly.
Maybe they do something like that again. You never know. But
you never know.
I wouldn't be surprised if Danny did some wheeling and dealing because there are so many picks going on in this draft. And then the one guy, before we got into the big names in the draft, some Flyers that if there is a trade made could potentially be on the block. And this list has been slightly updated since I first put it together. Owen Tippett's a name that I think I'd be surprised if he was traded, but I wouldn't be shocked because I really like him. I like a lot of his attributes. Like his speed is unbelievable, but he's inconsistent. He's not quite the goal scorer we want him to be. So Owen Tippett, there's a possibility he could be on the block, but I'd be a little surprised.
Yeah. He's one where like he would have to be a throw in like the Rossi trade. If they want a roster player back, it would have to be like a big deal trade to see him moved, I think.
I agree with that. That makes sense. Cam York, I would say before the Zegras trade, Cam York was the most likely player to be moved in a trade because he's young, he's still an RFA and everything, and he is a guy that he's had some conflict with the club, and especially with their former coach John Tortorella. So I wouldn't have been surprised, but Trevor Zegras is actually old buddies with Cam York. So York, Drysdale, and Zegras are all like close buds. So I'd be surprised if they brought in a guy like that and then immediately traded him away from a team that he's already got close ties with.
Yeah, that would be a tough one, I think.
Yeah. And then Bobby Brink is a name that I think Bobby Brink's one of those guys we all like a lot, but he might not have the importance of some of the other names like Tyson Forrester or Matvei Mishkov when you're thinking about the youth movement with this team.
Yeah, it definitely seems like he's still kind of trying to figure it out at this level. And I'm trying to say this in a not mean way. It seems like a lot of the trade packages that we see him sort of thrown into theoretically are like, we need to come up with a roster player of a guy that we don't feel super strongly about to just like make the numbers work.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. Like, that's not a mean way at all. Like, well done right there. So let's move on to the draft itself. So the big names in this draft, Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, Anton Frondel, James Higgins, Porter Martone, Caleb Desnoyers, Jake O'Brien, Brady Martin, and Roger McQueen. Now, Schaefer and Misa are pretty much the two names that we have no expectation of being available to the Flyers at the 6th overall pick, which is their first pick in this draft.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid 1-2 in this draft. Like they're, no question about it. They'll be off the board.
Yeah, Schaefer's an unbelievable defenseman. Misa is supposed to be an outstanding offensive talent, so not expected to be available. But it's wide open after that. I have seen mock drafts with everybody and their brother going to the Flyers at 6th at this point. So let's look at some of the names. So Anton Frondel is a name that we don't expect to be available at 6, but there is a chance that he could fall down there. I'm feeling less likely that happens today than previously.
Yeah, it really seems like he's going to be off the board as well by the time we get to the 6th pick. Really good player there, but it seems like I think Chicago is pretty heavily linked to them, I want to say. So,
that's what I've been hearing. Yeah. It sounds like Chicago's big on him. Porter Martone is a player that probably shouldn't fall to the Flyers at 6 either. If he does, it's purely because he's a winger. And everybody's going center heavy at the beginning of this draft. Martone, everything I've heard, he's got tremendous offensive ability. He's got size. He really is a great player to get in the top five, top six. And I'd be surprised if he fell to the Flyers, but there is a chance that he could go to them.
Yeah, I mean, if the way the pieces fall, he ends up falling to the Flyers, I would be thrilled with that pick. That's a really high-end addition that would be falling into their lap effectively.
Right. It's a high-end player, but again, everybody's going to complain that he's not a center at the end of the day, and they need centers, but
yeah,
you really have to take the best available player when it comes down to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Porter Martone, probably not going to be available, but he could be available. We'll see. Now, one of the names that shouldn't have been available to the Flyers at 6, but he's been falling down the board more and more every day, it feels like, is James Higgins. James Higgins, when we were talking about this all like a year ago, he was the number 1 pick. You know, it was surprising to see him fall. At first, it was just a little bit. He fell below Misa, and we're like, all right, he's going to go 3. Now they're talking about him going as low as 8 in this draft, which so Higgins, though, is supposed to have a fantastic pedigree, supposed to be just a super talented player, smart player, got a lot of the attributes the Flyers like. The only real knock against him, it seems, is he didn't quite have the production in his past college year than you kind of want in the draft year. And then the other thing is the size. You know, he's 5'10". He's not the biggest guy on the board. He's certainly no Roger McQueen, who we'll talk about in a minute. But, you know, from everything I've seen, his game is really, really good. And it feels like he'd be a steal at 6.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's kind of it for me. If he falls to the Flyers, I would be ecstatic if they could get him. And I mean, the thing with his season at college is like he still had a really good year. He just didn't have like a Macklin Celebrini rookie season or freshman season. So like not everybody is going to be able to do that. I think it's, you know, that's just sort of might need to adjust our expectations a little bit there. I'm still really happy with what he did in his first season. And like the size thing, I don't know, man. I'm not worried about it. And if you look at the fit with the Flyers, like I understand why some people would say like, well, Luchenko's undersized. Zegras is technically a little undersized. Are they going to want to draft another undersized center? But like, I don't know. I can't really see the Flyers being overly bothered by that. Like their former undersized player turned GM not being overly fussed with by size. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about that a lot. I think about the fact that Danny Briere was an effective small center a lot. And the fact that he's the GM now is, I think that's a big factor. I think he knows how the modern game works. And I think he knows that you don't need to be a bunch of behemoths out there. You don't need to be literal bullies out on the ice anymore.
Yeah. Things are changing.
Yep, they definitely are. So one of the guys that when the Flyers first got the 6th pick, we thought that the number 1 guy they were going to get at 6 was going to be Caleb Desnoyers, who is actually the brother of a current Flyer and Elliot Desnoyers. So we thought that he was going to be available, and his stock has actually risen quite a bit since then. And now it sounds like Caleb Desnoyers might go top 4, top 5, and it'd be a little surprised if he fell to the Flyers. But everything I heard about Desnoyers' game, very intelligent player, good two-way game, sounded like a real slam dunk of a Flyers pick if he does fall to them at 6.
Yeah, there's definitely a good skill set there. I do have like a couple of sort of like sneaky questions about him, just in terms of like, he's not quite as much of a play driver at the QMJHL level as I would maybe like to see on a guy I'm spending my 6th overall pick on. Also, he's committed to going back to the Q for next season. And I have some questions about like, is there a ceiling to the level of development he's going to be able to put together at that level? You know, I think I would have liked to see him ramp up a little bit, maybe go the college route. But yeah, I think good player there. Yeah, but like you said, probably going to be off the board by the time we get to the Flyers. So
yeah, his stock has risen a ton. Good for him. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of also, I like the idea more of a Higgins, of a more dynamic player with a higher upside ultimately.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the next guy I have listed here is a guy I've seen mocked to the Flyers quite a bit at this point. And this is where we start to get into the controversial territory with these high picks. Jake O'Brien, who's got a little bit more size than Higgins and everything, Supposed to have a very Flyers-like game, a lot of good attributes that the Flyers like, but ultimately not the most exciting pick of the bunch here, and it feels like a reach by a pick or two if they go for him. What are your thoughts on O'Brien?
Yeah, this is a pick I think I could talk myself into, but it doesn't really blow me away. Um, you would get a really good playmaker with that pick. If you're overly concerned about the size thing, he would address that for you. And I mean, he's a guy that you could reasonably see fitting in nicely playing alongside Mishkov. So that's not nothing, but probably not the pick for me.
Yeah, I totally feel that. The next guy has been mocked to both the Flyers and the Bruins quite a bit and plays. I feel like this guy plays a style of hockey that is very Flyers like of 15, 20 years ago. It's Brady Martin. He's a big hitter. He's been compared to Mike Richards and Sam Bennett, which is all stuff we like, right? Like we like hitters. We like guys who play with energy, who can like really rally a team. Bennett just won MVP in the Stanley Cup final, for God's sake. Like these are good players that you want on your team. But Martin, from all indicators, sounds like, again, a reach at 6. Doesn't sound like a guy that also is going for what the Flyers are going for with this new style that they're really going for. Like they're trying to get away from the Flyers of old. And this feels like a regression if they get Brady Martin.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think a lot of the folks mocking him to the Flyers are maybe like less working on like actual intel that they have and more just sort of falling into old assumptions about how the Flyers are playing and are built. I don't think it really makes sense for them at this point. I think it does make a lot of sense for the Bruins right after them, but probably not for the Flyers.
The Bruins need anything at center. They're just such a disaster there right now since Bergeron retired. Just terrible.
Yeah.
And then the last name I have listed here is probably the biggest enigma of this entire draft. Roger McQueen, 6'5" boy, but not a lot of meat on those bones. Like he's 6'5", but he's not even over 200 pounds, right?
I don't think so.
No. So Roger McQueen he's a big boy, and that size is intriguing, but he also had a back injury this past year that he was dealing with. And considering that Sean Couturier just like seems to have recovered this year off his back injuries, we know how serious that can be.
Yeah.
And while he's a young guy with size, this feels like a risky pick. And after striking out with Nolan Patrick, I feel risk averse when it comes to these kind of guys.
I think that's super valid. I mean, based on everything that came out of the scouting combine, it seems like whatever he had to say put a lot of people's concerns to rest that the back injury might not be fully healed. It seems like he's pretty much good to go at this point. So I think that is contributing to why he's rising on a lot of these boards. But for the Flyers, yeah, I think that would be a bit of a reach as much as I do like the skill set.
I feel like if they did draft him, they'd have to be super confident that he's over everything. They'd have to be like, this is a slam dunk. Because say whatever you will about what Danny Briere's done so far, when he's made draft picks, he has not hesitated to maybe reach for somebody that he's confident in. If you look at Oliver Bonk, for instance, that felt like a reach at the time, and the way he's risen up through the rankings since then has been phenomenal.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the thing with him is just like probably as much as like you might feel confident in the player, there's probably still a better player on the board at 6.
Right. So ultimately, who do you think the Flyers take at 6? What's your gut feeling right now?
I don't know. I'm kind of thinking Hagens because the other thing, what was it? Martitas was saying that they brought him in for a tour of the facilities as well. That's not nothing.
That's not nothing. And I wonder if a lot of that is they're hoping another Boston college guy doesn't try to get away with them like Cutter Gauthier did.
For real.
Like you want some certainty at this point because that was such a debacle, and thankfully they ended up with Jamie Drysdale out of that. But they could have ended up like the Ducks, who took a third line center, a second round pick, and a fourth round pick for a guy who was the crown jewel of their system at some point.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I mean, Desnoyers plays a good current Flyers game. A lot of the mocks have him taking O'Brien. Brady Martin has those comparisons. McQueen's the biggest swing, but yeah, Hagens like has top 3 talent ultimately.
Yeah.
And if they feel confident and they take him at 6, I'm going to be super happy about that.
Yeah.
So let's move on. They got 2 more picks in the first round, and there's a ton of names here, right? So I don't want to go through all of them, but if you look at the guys that might be available in the later round, who are your highlights? Who are guys that maybe like 3 or 4 guys that you would consider drafting with those picks?
Yeah, I do really like Braden Coots.
I love that name. It just
Firstly,
sounds
it
like a
would be
flyer.
so funny, yeah, to have 2 Coots on the
You have
team.
2
It'd be really
Coots,
nice.
and then they've had so many Bradens in the past.
Yeah,
Braden Shen, Braden Coburn.
I don't know. Have they ever had a Braden in that spelling?
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
so.
so.
They got to have them all. They got to
Yeah,
catch them all at this point.
absolutely. But he does play a very Flyers type game. Like he's a great forechecker, great motor, really detailsy, but he's still got some, dynamic-ish puck skills. Um, I think in a draft where they really want to be loading up on centers, that would be a good option. Um, but if they wanted to go defense, I like Blake Fiddler. Good size on that one, super mobile, but also like kind of mean.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, which is fun.
He's listed at
Um,
6'4", 209, which
yeah,
is, but they said he has good mobility. If you can get that combination, I'm super into that.
yeah, and I think the thing with him too is like he's mobile, period, not just like mobile for his size,
Yeah.
which I think is an important distinction.
Yeah, that's a big factor. It really is a big factor right there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm into that big time. Any other names stick out to you late in this first round?
Later in the draft, again, another center. I like Will Horkoff. Kind of like a toolsy guy, but like plays a little bit more of a defensive game. I know I saw at least one draft, mock draft that had them taking Ravensburgen, the goalie, which I don't know that I would necessarily do, but maybe with the second round pick.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It feels kind of foolish to take a goalie with a first round pick in this day and age. It's like
Yeah,
if you look over at the NFL, it's like taking a running back early, although that might be different for the NFL now. But yeah, goalies don't seem to go early ever. Ravensburg is supposed to be the best in the draft, but I don't know. It just given all the center issues, and also you want to take some swings at defense. Like I love that Fiddler pick for that reason, because those are the kind of attributes you can see in a first pairing defenseman. You know, like somebody
yeah,
that actually could turn into like your defenseman of the future on the top pairing.
definitely.
Yeah. So let's move beyond the first round. Let's do the early. Let's do the second round where they have another 3 picks. Any other standouts to you in the second round? Like I was trying to list all the names earlier, and I just got exhausted because it could be anybody. Like I
Yeah.
might as well just listed the entire projected second round
No, for
from
real. It's
Corey
really
Pronman.
overwhelming. Um, I mean, if you want to take a swing, Simon Wong is like big, very raw. But if you want to, address some size on the back end and, take a shot on a guy who's kind of toolsy, that could be one. Cole McKinney out of the NTDP is another center, like good sort of utility game. Um, I wouldn't hate going goalie in the second round though. And assuming Ravensburgen is off the board, I kind of like Jack. I always stumble on this name, Ivan Kovic, who's like a little bit undersized, but one of the probably the best skater of the goalie group. So that I think is intriguing.
The name pronunciation is always the hardest part of the hockey draft.
I know. And then I like work myself up about it. I'm like looking at it and I'm like, oh my God, am I going to get it wrong?
I get them wrong I get established NHL player names wrong. It's tough.
We're
It's
doing
tough
our
out there.
best.
We're doing our best. We're trying out there. I asked Thomas from BSH for some intriguing names throughout the rest of the draft too. So he listed he listed Alex Wong, which is that yeah. So he listed Alex Wong, Quinn. Talk about getting names wrong here. Quinn Beauchenez, let's go with that, who he called a smart ass player. I love that right there.
Perfect.
Daniel Nieminen, let's go with that. Nieminen. It looks like they put Antti Niemi and Kimmo Timonen's names together. Malte Voss, Sean Barnhill, Ethan Kazada. Let's go with that. Chata. Could be Chata. It's spelled Czata. Lucas Salchin, Victor Klingsell, and Harry Nanzi. I don't know if how many of those names you've heard. They were all new to me today.
Those
But
sure
any
are some
thoughts on any of
names.
those guys?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I've still been focused in the second round. So if Thomas likes those names, great.
Great. I'm into it. But yeah, I mean, he said Alex Wong's a really strong skater. He said that, as we said, Beauchenez is a smart ass player. Nieminen is a Finnish guy that is a very good skater. Over Adrian has already played a full season in Liga. Malte Voss, which is a hell of a name, Malte Voss. He can hammer people into the boards like that. Sean Barnhill, that's a great name too. Great skater, physical. Yeah. And I saw that Jacob on the blog also seconded Ethan Chata and said, just a preference here. Smart OHL player playing on a shit team in Niagara. Very physical and could grow even more with his frame. Skating is a slight issue, but feels like a Flyers pick. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get some names on the radar so that when you're going into day 2 of this draft, you're like, I've never heard any of these guys. Guess what? You've heard me say these names once.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'm really excited for this draft. It's really going to be a great time at the draft party, and it's just an exciting time to be a Flyers fan right now. Any other thoughts on the draft before we wrap up here, Maddie?
You know, I am just ready for it to be here. I feel like we've been prepping for it for the past like 2 months over on the site. And now that it's finally real, I'm just like ready to get going.
I am so ready to go on this. I've got so many podcasts out this week. I'm doing one immediately once we finish here. I'm doing Flyperbole after that. I did one yesterday reacting to the Zegras trade. I also did a video with Kyle and Kelly guessing the draft players based on just their pictures.
So funny, by the way.
I know. I couldn't believe Kelly got as many as she did. That was really good. And there's a Sporkle quiz if you want to take that yourself out there. So go look that up. I've also got PHLY later this week. I know you've been doing some stuff with PHLY too, which has been fantastic.
Yeah. Lots going on.
Lots going on. I'm on PHLY Friday, and I might be subbing in for some of the draft stuff on Friday night too. So, hey, but come out and say hi at the draft party. It's $5, Chickies and Peach. You get some food with that money, and the proceeds go to Snyder Hockey. Or if you got a little bit of cash or you want a deal, the VIP tickets, that's a good deal. You get food and booze with that one. I think. Well, I don't know about the food, but I know you get beverages. So
hard to pass that up.
Hard to pass that up. You're making money on that one as far as I'm concerned. And yeah. Bernie Perront's going to be there. Come on, Flyers legend Bernie.
What more could you want?
What more could you want? So, folks, that's been our draft preview. Thank you so much to Maddie for joining me today. Wonderful talk. Always a pleasure. And I'm just always happy to have somebody on this blog that knows about these younger guys that I have no clue about.
Always thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So, Maddie, if people have feedback for you, where can they find you on the socials if they want to give you a shout?
I'm like technically on both X and Blue Sky, but like barely on there. At Madeline Campbell on both of those. But mostly just find me over on BroadStreetHockey.com.
Yep. Find her over on BroadStreetHockey.com. You can find me over mainly on Blue Sky these days. It's Flyperbole on there. You can also follow me at Esteban if you want Philadelphia musings, but it's Flyperbole if you're looking for hockey stuff. You can also follow Flyperbole over on Instagram and TikTok where I put up clips of the show and all that fun stuff. So yeah, lots of socials to follow us on. And be sure if you are watching this on, well, yeah, I'm going to put this on both, but if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to give us a like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. YouTube has been huge for us over the past season or half season, and we're just going to make it bigger and better. So great time to come on board BSH as well. And be sure to subscribe and rate and review if you're over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of that fun stuff. But thanks so much for watching or listening today, guys. Let's go Flyers. And until next time, in the words of the great Gene Hart, good night and good hockey.